Hi, hi. Just getting connected here. I am Carrie for gluten's sake, and I am just absolutely loving this month of interviews. So it's just popping live. Yay. So when you pop on, you can say hi. I'm just going to invite Meg to join us, and we're going to do an interview. So when you pop on, say hello and tell us where in the world you are. Okay, it's just connecting. Yay! Hey, Meg.
Hey,
How are
hey, how
you?
are you?
I'm
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's your morning, yeah?
It is, yeah, 8:30. Good way to start the day.
Good, good. Awesome. Yay. Well, we have people popping on. This is so fun. So
Awesome.
let's just start with, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell people a bit about you.
Yeah, cool. I'm Megan Kelly. I am a holistic nutritionist. I have celiac disease as well as Hashimoto's. So now I work with other women with autoimmune disease and digestive disorders. And I use nutrition and I focus also on self love to help heal their guts so they can get back to kicking butts. That's my little
I
catchphrase.
love it.
But yeah, so I work at two naturopathic clinics, and then I have my own business as well.
So you are one busy gal.
I am, but I like it like that.
Yeah, love it. So how long have you been diagnosed with celiac?
About 9 years.
Okay.
So yeah, so a while.
Yeah. So what was your
Yeah.
journey like to get diagnosed?
So okay, so yeah, so it feels like a long one, but it all happened really fast. I lost a lot of weight really quickly. That was the main thing. I got down to about 90 pounds, and I'm about 5'5", 5'6". So I
Okay.
was quite small, and I was eating like a lot of pasta to try and gain weight because I was also a runner. Um,
Yeah.
so so yeah, it was kind of confusing. Everyone kind of just assumed that I had an eating disorder because I was like late high school, early university. So I was like, look at the bowls of pasta that I'm eating. I don't
Yeah.
have an eating disorder. But yeah, so I was actually quite lucky to get diagnosed pretty quickly. Yeah, my doctor ran blood tests originally, and then we did the biopsy later. Um, but yeah, and what I didn't realize at the time was that my depression and my hormonal imbalances, I had dysmenorrhea, so I didn't have my period for about 2 years, and I actually also lost some teeth, which I am now
Oh.
associating with celiac. Again, at the time I didn't quite understand, but because the some of the most important minerals that you stop absorbing are calcium and iron and things like that. I bone loss or bone mineral density often decreases, and I had an incident where I got kicked in the face, but the tubing accident. Okay, so up in my cottage, and my ex-boyfriend's like foot came up and like kicked me in the face as he
Yeah.
flew out the back of the tube. Anyway, yeah, so there was an inciting incident, but because I was so malnourished, my body couldn't heal. And so the root of my tooth started to decay, and I actually had to have this one and this one pulled. And for a while I had like 3 or 4 surgeries to try and get bone from my hip put in there, bone from my jaw put in there, and try to get it to regrow, and it never took. So I actually had to get this crazy technology from like the States. I'm in Canada.
Yeah, yeah.
So I had to get yeah, this like technology put into my gum that is like supposed to help the bone grow. So now I have this like weird metal like futuristic gadget in my face. And that finally
Wow.
helped the root to grow. So then they put these two are fake. So there's some bone there, and then they've attached the implants.
That
Anyway,
is
that's like my
so
crazy story.
fascinating. No, I'm really interested in that kind of stuff because, like, it's funny when you're saying that. I'm like, huh, I don't think it's related, but I don't have a permanent tooth under one of my teeth. And so
Okay.
I still have a baby tooth, which is so strange to me. But I think about these things randomly when somebody says something like that. I'm like, huh, you just never know, like, what is traced to celiac and what's not. Because as you say that, I'm like, who knows? Like maybe I never got a permanent tooth as a result. I mean, it could just be I never got one, but strange.
Yeah, but that makes total sense, right? The minerals are the first thing to stop being absorbed. So yeah, I could see that depending on how early you had it, right?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I was undiagnosed for years. Like I had symptoms since middle school and it took me until, later 20s to get diagnosed. So, who
Right.
knows?
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm sure that you also have a very unique perspective because you work with do you work primarily with women or do you work with males too?
Honestly, primarily women, just because it's so much more prevalent for women to
Yeah.
have autoimmune disease. But I do work with men as well. It's just fewer and further between.
Yeah. So when people come to you, are they generally newly diagnosed and you're helping them to just get kind of like an understanding of what's going on and figure out like a healthy routine for them, or kind of walk us through what that looks like in your practice?
Yeah. When it's celiac disease, it's either newly diagnosed, or actually what I'm finding more often is it's because actually that's the second part of my story, is that going gluten free didn't solve my problem. I had to dig a little bit deeper. So I'm finding that I am getting those people now, just because they've heard my story or whatever it may be. They have gone gluten free, or at least done everything that they know how to do in terms of going gluten free, but still haven't found healing. So those are actually more so the people that I'm working with. I do definitely work with people who are freshly diagnosed as well, helping them get set up, giving them all the ins and outs, and like the learning from all the times I got gluten, that the things
Yeah.
to avoid. And I always implement like a gut healing regimen right away. I think that's a huge advantage. That's, I think, part of the reason that I didn't heal. And it makes total sense, right? For a lot of us who had it for a long time and didn't get diagnosed, there's so much gut damage that's been done that going gluten free definitely helps the damage to stop happening. But sometimes it's not quite enough to allow our guts to actually regenerate or to allow to regrow. So implementing some specific gut healing strategies is a part of it for either situation, whether you've gone gluten free and it's not quite working, or you're newly diagnosed. I just always slip that in there because I
Yeah.
think it's an important part of it.
So
Yeah.
that is actually one of the questions I received on a DM, and I don't know who I saw pop on, so I'm not sure if she's on here or not, but I told her to try to tune in today if she could, because one of
Nice.
the questions she had was like, do you have any supplements or natural things that you refer people to if she was basically saying she knew she had been cross-contaminated recently and she felt like she wasn't healing as quickly as she wanted and was looking for some tips.
Okay. Okay. So is it that she's being cross-contaminated and wants to know how to recover from that, or is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it's that there's a kind of an ongoing? Okay. Yeah. If there's ever cross-contamination, I generally will go with activated charcoal, just because whatever's in there still, any of the gluten, the activated charcoal will bind to it and help to minimize the damage at least, and then help you to eliminate it in your stool. So that's the first thing that I would do. And then I would re-inoculate with tons of bone broth to reduce inflammation. Ideally, soak or cook your bone broth with like turmeric and ginger and all the good anti-inflammatory digestive herbs. And yeah, drink that on an empty stomach as much as you can. You can do like turmeric lattes and things like that as well, because the turmeric, especially when there's like a milky substance, can kind of just coat the whole digestive tract and help to reduce inflammation. But yeah, the bone broth will help to heal bring the tight junctions of the gut back together, so prevent the leaky gut from proliferating again. And it will also help to reduce inflammation, calm the immune system, etc. So that's what I do. I try to stick to bone broth as much as possible, and then just eat things that are really easy to digest, like cooked vegetables and fruits and things like that for the day, and then you can kind of add things as you go.
Got it. No, that's awesome. That's super helpful. Because I think that's a
Good.
common question, right? I mean, people are always like, what do I do? Or even just after getting gluten, it's like, ugh. And for
Yeah.
me, I always, like I had this conversation with somebody else I interviewed this week. It's always remembering that you have an autoimmune disease, so your body's sick. Like remembering like,
Yeah.
okay, what are kind of the key things you need when you're sick? You need water, you need sleep, like you have to take care of yourself. You know, it's not just like, oh, I ate something. It's like, no, you have an autoimmune disease. Like you're sick.
Yes. Yes. I think that's so often forgotten, especially with celiac disease, just because it feels like, because it's the only autoimmune disease for which we know what the trigger is, it's so simplified. At least in the mainstream medical community, it's like, oh, go gluten-free, you'll be fine.
Right.
But it's like there is an autoimmune disease. And that means that you're going to be more sensitive to stress and lack of sleep and things like that. Like sometimes I feel like I've been glutened if I'm just crazy stressed out. Like my stomach just goes bananas.
Yeah.
So that sometimes is part of it, right? Do take the day to rest. It's okay to rest. You have a disease, and that does not make you weak.
Right.
It just means you need to rest, and then you can get back to it when you're ready.
Yeah.
But yeah, take a sick day. Like you're sick. It's allowed.
Yeah. Well, and that's so interesting. I mean, I find that a lot. If I don't sleep enough, like I'm very sensitive to sleep with my stomach. And like even today, I kind of felt it because I didn't sleep enough last night. And I can feel it like, okay, I need to, drink more water. I need to get extra sleep tonight. Just noticing how my body responds to things like stress, sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not like a conceptual, oh, I kind of feel like my stomach go off because I'm stressed. Like cortisol literally increases intestinal permeability. So we're seeing a leaky gut start to happen because of excess stress. And that's where any chronic disease, and especially autoimmune disease, is so correlated with chronic stress. So I think that's a huge part of healing for anyone. And that is something that I would enforce. Whether you're newly diagnosed or whether it's been a while and you're not finding the healing that you're looking for.
Yeah. So, do you work with Western doctors? Are you only holistic? Like, tell us a little bit more about how you work in your different jobs and what that looks like.
Yeah, so I'm at 2 naturopathic clinics. So
Okay.
so I work with NDs.
Okay.
I haven't cracked into the mainstream medical community. They're generally quite resistant.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna keep working on that. Definitely, like if I have clients who trust their MDs, I will speak to them through the client. Like I'll just be like, just ask, tell them your nutritionist said this and whatnot. But there's no like referral system or anything like that set up.
Okay.
But I do have a network of naturopaths that we refer around. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you find, because it's interesting, like I did an interview with a dietitian. I don't know if you know Taylor, but she had put out a poll on her Instagram, like right around the time I was interviewing her. And I found it very interesting. Then we had a conversation around it, like the number of people that don't get good follow-up care, right? Like the amount of people that get told by a Western doctor, you have celiac.
Yes.
And then it's basically like somebody told me that, who was I talking to this week? They said their doctor said, Google it. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like that's what their doctor said to them. Like, oh, you have celiac and Google it.
Yeah. I mean, my doctor didn't even tell me to Google it. He was just like, go gluten-free. Bye. Like, okay, what is gluten?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Ah.
So you're totally right. I think that, like my ideal world, I'd love to see a system set up where mainstream medical doctors say, okay, you have celiac, you need to go gluten-free. Here is my favorite resource for getting you on that track, right? Like there does need to be way more support because it's also emotional and overwhelming. And to feel like you have to just kind of drop your whole life and basically learn a whole new language, like completely reset all of your habits. You need help.
Yeah.
Like unless you like don't have other things going on. Like I was in school and honestly I ended up switching career paths because I kept reading about gluten as opposed to reading about what I was supposed to be reading about for school.
Yeah.
So like it takes over your life unless you have help and somebody to kind of do that work and research and whatnot for you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think everyone can relate, right? Like anyone who's been diagnosed, whether it was a year ago or 20 years ago, like still remembers that phone call or that conversation and that feeling, you know? And it's so overwhelming. And even if you know people, I still think that, you know, like, yeah, that helps, but your whole life changes, and it's not a negative, at least like I view it as a very positive thing, and everyone I've talked to, I feel like has a very positive spin on it, but it's still, you know, like it's still overwhelming, and it still is a whole new way of being, like you're talking about a new language, new things you have to learn. I mean,
absolutely.
There does need to be a better system in terms of helping people get the care that they need.
Yeah. And I think to your point about like, if you know somebody, that helps for sure. But everybody's situation is so different. And I think that's something to stress as well. Like I said, like going gluten-free didn't, like I needed to do more than that. And so, you know, if I have a friend who like feels really good just gluten-free and eating like the Glutino Oreos and stuff like that, and I'm confused as to why I don't feel good when I do that, right? Like you know, so everyone is different, and you need, again, I think you just need that support to be like, it's okay. Like your system is maybe a little bit more sensitive. There are, I think you'd seen my post about the 20% of us who cross-react with other proteins. So things like millet and quinoa, which are like the first things that we put in place of all the gluten, can cross-react for some people. Those anti-gliadin antibodies can start attacking those, and so your disease process can kind of continue even though you're completely gluten-free and doing everything by the book.
So is that what happened for you?
Yeah. So I have to be paleo pretty well to feel good. Like if I have some rice here and there, like I'll be fine. And rice isn't one of the ones that cross reacts, so it is more the millet and the quinoa and things like that. But I just feel better off of grains generally, and same goes for legumes for me. I think it's probably just the lectin content of those things that because they have proteins basically that can kind of burrow through the gut lining, they can potentiate a leaky gut. And if you're somebody who's predisposed to leaky gut, then it can just lead to more inflammation. So it's not even always digestive. It's sometimes like I'll have quinoa and I'll get a really big headache, or it'll break out, or whatever it may be, just inflammation. So for best health, I have to be paleo, and then I have to avoid some of those other things that creep in there. Dairy is a big one. I have to be dairy free for sure. And that's really common with celiacs. So there's that cross reactivity as well.
Yeah.
For sure. All the dairy proteins.
Yes. I just wanted to read this comment because I didn't want to miss it. I didn't know until this week that celiac was an autoimmune disease, and I was diagnosed 10 years ago. That's the thing, right? Like a lot of people don't know much about it. Like they're told go gluten-free, and I don't know what other resource, you know, like it really just depends on who you know, what's around you, like how helpful your doctor is or not helpful.
Totally. Yeah. I find that for a lot of autoimmune diseases, they're not told that they're autoimmune. And that's a big part of it, because that's part of how you understand how it needs to be managed. Things like psoriasis, right? Like people are like, oh yeah, like, you know, I get dry and itchy sometimes. I have psoriasis. It's like, that is autoimmune. Alopecia is autoimmune. Vitiligo is autoimmune. Like all of these things. And if you know that it's autoimmune, then you know that it's inflammatory. You know that there's a leaky gut, and then you can approach it with all of that information, and it just makes it so much easier.
That's fascinating. So what kind of follow-up care do you recommend for people? Like, let's say they got diagnosed and maybe it's been like 3 months or 6 months and they're not feeling better yet. Do you recommend just initially seeking out a naturopath, like someone like yourself, to help through the process and walk them through it, or?
Yeah, I think any kind of holistic care practitioner, generally nutritionists, especially, you know, those who have gone through it themselves, have that perspective, right? Like I totally respect all of my, you know, nutritionist colleagues, but just to have that experience of having been glutened myself and knowing how to cope, I think that is something to seek out, at least somebody who specializes in it, because, you know, just like you said, you can do all the Googling, And it's not like you necessarily in nutrition school go into specifically celiac or specifically this disease, right? It's kind of nutrition as an umbrella concept.
Sure.
So again, unless you've done your extra research, you might not necessarily know. But yeah, an ND nutritionist is kind of ideal, because then you get this sort of really personalized supplements from an ND, and then you get the really focused in nutrition bit from your holistic nutritionist. And I think it's helpful to have it in that realm. And this is my bias a little bit too, right? But I think that the holistic world recognizes the stress components, the sleep components, the exercise components a little bit more, works that in as well, just by nature of being holistic, right?
Yeah, well, but I mean, that's where I really, really hope Western medicine is headed. I mean, I'm also a little biased. I'm in Asia, and like it's a, I love Asian stuff for that, because I feel like it is more of a holistic approach, and it has been for years upon years, right? Like I think Western medicine has a lot to learn. And I mean, I think there's great advancements, like don't get me wrong, but yeah, we're whole beings. Like we have to treat the whole person, like if you're just treating
everything
one
is
piece,
connected.
like it's not going to all correlate together. You need to treat all of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's another part of it that's so interesting about how everything is so connected. Like the cascade effect of things is amazing. Like I mentioned earlier, I have Hashimoto's, right?
Yeah.
Which is an autoimmune thyroid condition. And there are lots of theories as to how these kinds of things develop, for sure, but celiac disease and Hashimoto's are highly correlated. And one of the theories that's out there is that Hashimoto's is actually sort of an evolutionary thing that basically helps you to slow down your thyroid really quickly. And if your gut is compromised and you're not absorbing nutrition, your body's going to say, hey, I really need to conserve my energy and my resources. So let's just start also attacking my thyroid and slow everything down. Like, again, everything is just so connected. And that's an extreme situation. But yeah, even to the point of like, if you're constipated and then then you become toxic because you're not eliminating things, and your bowel actually reabsorbs toxins and hormones, because we are supposed to detox estrogens and things like that through our liver filters them, and then we're supposed to eliminate them through the bowel. And if we're constipated, our bowel will actually reabsorb that estrogen back into the bloodstream, and then that messes with all our hormonal balance. So something that feels as benign as constipation can be what's causing hormonal imbalance.
Wow.
Right? I know, crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like connecting all the dots and looking for all the pieces, I mean, and then sadly, sometimes you don't know until like something else happens, and then you're able to go, oh, this is how it's all connected.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Cool. So, how do you manage your Hashimoto's? Is there anything you have to say about that? Because I actually do know a fair amount of people, not like a ton, but a fair amount, that have both celiac and Hashimoto's.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a similar approach. Everything comes back to the gut, so gut healing, right? So I think I've sort of touched on it a few times, but for every autoimmune disease in which it's been tested, a leaky gut is present, so that increased intestinal permeability. So basically, everything that you can do every day to keep that gut lining healed and sealed is the key. So if that leaky gut, basically a condition wherein there are sort of holes in your gut lining, and undigested food particles and bacteria and pathogens and things like that can get through to the bloodstream, and naturally that causes your immune system to go, whoa, like all these things shouldn't be in the bloodstream the way that they are. And that is how your immune system sort of proliferates, and then it makes it easy for your immune system to start making mistakes and attacking self instead of those foreign invaders if it's just overwhelmed. And that's like the concept of molecular mimicry, right? So all of that is to say, heal and seal the gut lining. So, the things like collagen, the bone broth, gelatin, getting enough fiber and water, like really simple stuff like that. Any way you can reduce inflammation. So seafood can be really helpful for getting those omega-3s. Turmeric is really popular for that, ginger, those kinds of things, daily, right? Like, I think that's the thing. It's like you're never done with autoimmune disease. There's no
Yeah.
cure. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have to be on it all the time. And that's where it gets overwhelming. Like I go by the realistic holistic. So I also think there's room for, letting go and having fun and doing the things that, maybe you'll get a tummy ache or you'll feel really tired the next day, but sometimes it's worth it. It's just knowing how to bounce back and give your body the love it needs to recover after that. But yeah, long story short, keep the gut healed and sealed for both the celiac and the Hashimoto's. And yeah, in terms of Hashimoto's, like there are other things that you can be really specific about, like selenium supplementation is proven really effective in clinical trial. And one of the most effective ways to get selenium without buying supplements is to eat Brazil nuts, which all you need is 3 Brazil nuts. 2 to 3 Brazil nuts a day gets you your full RDA. So they're basically multivitamins and they're delicious. Although I will say there are some people who are sensitive to nuts, so you just kind of have to know yourself, right?
Yeah.
But little things like that.
Huh, that's fascinating. See, I love this. I'm learning something every day. Like there's just
Good.
so much wisdom in the community of people, right? And that's why I
Yeah.
love connecting with other people and sharing resources because, right, like for example, I did an interview with a mom of 4 kids, right? Like Coral's got 4 kids, and so she was talking about how to set your house up for success when you have a babysitter coming in. And I was like, I wouldn't even think
Amazing.
about that, right? Like, I mean, I'm sure I would if I had
Totally.
kids, but
Unique
right now I
experience.
would not think of that. And so she's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I have to have a conversation and tell the babysitter she can't bring in her own food and she can eat my food and
Right.
like, keeping the kitchen entirely gluten free because that's the house that they
Amazing.
already have. Just so it's just
Yeah.
fun to like find people in different, spaces and their experiences and share knowledge.
Totally. Totally. Everybody has their own experience. That's so valuable. It's awesome that you're doing this. It's such an amazing
Yeah.
series. So
So
good for celiac awareness month.
I love it. I like wish every month were celiac awareness. I mean, it can be
I
like
mean, it can
it
be.
still
Yeah.
can
In
be,
our world, it can be. Yeah. Yeah.
So is there anything else you want people to know?
Um, what do I want people to know? Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I'll touch on the self-love aspect because that's something that I also work with. And I mean, my personal experience was this way. I mean, I was diagnosed again late high school, early university. So the only thing that mattered to me at that time was how skinny I was and all of that stuff, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
honestly, and this is where I see my celiac disease as a saving grace because it reminded me that I need to take care of myself, in that it's not all about being tiny and whatnot. So my theory and yeah, I've seen this from other sources as well, like the mind body connection. Like we said, everything is so connected. So if you have these chronic thoughts of self hate or self criticism all of the time, your body might start behaving the same way. So for somebody with autoimmune disease where your immune system is attacking self, anything that you can do mentally to not attack yourself is so important. And uh, it's something that I preach all the time, but it just like the healing practices for the gut have to be ongoing. That practice has to be ongoing because nobody wakes up every morning being like, well, maybe some people, but being like, I'm the best person ever and there's nothing wrong with me and I'm perfect. Like very few people think like that. And we have to make that a practice, especially I think in today's world where we're just like bombarded by all these pictures of beauty and perfection, and if you don't have this or if you don't look like this, you're wrong. Like you have to actively convince yourself or remind yourself that those things are not true and that you are enough and all of those things. And like I like, it gets me emotional even thinking about it because it still is an ongoing journey for me, and I know that it is for so many of my clients, and I think that is a big missing piece to the puzzle for a lot of people as well.
I
So I
love
would just
that and
encourage
completely am
that.
on board with that. I think my biggest thing is like mindset and retraining your brain. Like I am obsessed with the mind and the capability of our minds. And I hadn't thought about it in that way of your body attacking itself. So I love that. That's just
Cool.
like a really good lens to see it through. I mean, I'm all about like how you talk to yourself matters, what you think, it turns into actions and, it turns into your reality. So pay attention to what you're telling yourself.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I love that you do that work and I love that you do that work with your clients because everyone needs more of it. Uh-oh. Sorry. I was like, oh no.
I think we're back. We're good. Okay.
No, it's
Sorry,
just,
do you want to say that again? Yeah, I
I
missed
was
the
just
end
saying,
there.
I love that you do that work with your clients because I think it's so important. I mean, we all need reminders of that and we need more voices speaking out on that and empowering women to own who they are and not feel like you're lacking, because I I feel like if I had one message, it would be you're enough. Like that's my billboard, you're enough.
Yeah.
And and
Yeah.
I think everyone needs to hear that. Like cuz we all have bad days, we all have bad moments.
Absolutely. Yeah. And sometimes you need the reminder staring you in the face. Like if you go into my bathroom, I have written on my mirror in lipstick, give yourself a compliment. And like
Love
if
it.
that wasn't there, I absolutely wouldn't. I'd be looking in the mirror and I'd be like, ah, yeah, you suck. But I see the compliment thing and I'm like, okay, this is one thing I like about you right now. And that changes your whole mindset for the day. So that's a
Yeah.
little strategy, right? So you can just go home and do that. You don't have to do it in lipstick. You could put a post-it note on if you want to be more cool about it.
I love it.
But
Well, and I was looking at your feed and because I feel like we haven't connected for that long. It's only been a short
yeah.
while. So I was like, "Oh, You Are a Badass," which is like one of my favorite books, and You Are a Badass at Making
Mhm.
Money. I love them both.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, totally. That's part of the mindset.
Yes.
And yeah, she has a lot of good strategies in there as well, like exercises. Like I think you do have to make it an active exercise. You can't just be like, okay, I'm going to be better at loving myself. Go. It just
No.
doesn't happen
It's like anything.
easily.
It's a muscle. I mean, it's just like
Yeah,
you can't go to the gym once and be done. Like, no,
right.
you got to keep
Exactly.
showing up.
Yeah, and if you get really ripped and then you stop going to the gym, you're going to lose your muscle as well, right? It's totally, yeah, the same thing. With
Exactly.
both, I think, the gut healing aspect and the self-love aspect for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love that. Well, thanks for sharing that. Where can
Yeah.
people find you?
So I'm on Instagram as realistic.holistic, but my website is therealisticholistic.com. It's a mouthful and it's like I still have a hard time typing it in, but if you think about it, the realistic holistic. Yeah, search me that way anywhere and you'll find me.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me. This was so fun. And thanks for all your helpful tips. Like, this is seriously
Yeah,
so
thanks so much for
valuable.
having me. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me. It's awesome to be connected with you and yeah, let's make every month Celiac Awareness Month.
I'm in. That sounds good.
Cool.
All right. Well, have a good day,
Awesome.
Meg. It's so good to talk.
Thank you. You too.
Okay. Bye.